Hey guys, I wanted to jump on today and talk a little bit about my healing journey and my journey to diagnosis. So, if you're at the stage of brain retraining, first of all, I'll give you a little trigger warning. If you're at the stage of brain retraining where you're avoiding any talk about symptoms or diagnoses or testing or anything along those lines, please skip this video and I'll give a little background on that. So, in a lot of the brain retraining programs, they are so rooted in positive psychology and neurolinguistic programming that there are stages of those programs where you are supposed to really make a commitment to not doing any research or any reading or commiserating or support groups about diagnoses, symptom checking, body checking, things like that, because you're so focused on your healing journey. And I'm really a huge believer and proponent of that. However, I do also think, as a provider myself and working with a lot of holistic providers and medical providers, I am a firm believer that there are certain medical issues that do need to still be addressed, that brain retraining can really help symptoms, hugely improve symptoms, but there still are some medical issues and medical illnesses that we need to get to the root cause of and we need to treat effectively. And if we don't do that, we're not going to find true healing. So I'm at the stage in my journey where I've been doing brain retraining pretty consistently for a little over 2 years. And before that, I had the background in positive psychology and CBT and NLP as a therapist. So, I felt pretty confident to kind of once more go down the rabbit hole of figuring out some symptoms and root cause. So this is going to be a little bit of an update on my journey because I just got some very extensive lab work done, and that's kind of where I am today. So yeah, if you're not at that stage in your journey, please skip and watch a different video, maybe do some yoga or something positive. But for those of you who are interested, I thought it would be good to share some background just because I've shared my background and my training of my journey of being a licensed mental health therapist in 4 states and owning a practice that focuses on that and focuses on using holistic healing modalities in conjunction with evidence-based practices. So we're a holistic practice, but we all, also use evidence-based work. And then I've shared my journey on being a 200 and then 500 and now 1,000-hour yoga teacher, and I'm really close to having that International Association of Yoga Therapists credential after my name. I have a couple more months of a practicum after finishing the coursework, which has just been challenging, working full-time and dealing with chronic illness to get practicum hours in, so that's where I'm at there. But I think there's a certain level of credibility that we all know in the chronic illness community we would prefer to work with someone who's been there themselves. So I wanted to share a little bit about my healing journey and illness journey. So growing up, I think right off of the bat, there was a lot of issues with allergies at a young age, and possibly in apartments as a really young child, maybe some mold exposure, we're not really sure. But as a kid with a lot of allergies, in the 80s and 90s, the medical profession's idea was just to throw me on prednisone and mass amounts of antibiotics and experimental drugs for my really bad eczema all the time. And then of course later on realizing some of those drugs had been pulled off the market, some asthma meds and some eczema meds and some allergy meds had been pulled off the market for causing a lot of autoimmune issues, cancer, things like that. But as a kid, it was maybe a solid 15 years of just constantly being on different medications. Finally, when I was 18, a nurse at an allergy clinic had mentioned, oh, have you considered diet changes like gluten or dairy? Maybe is causing some of this eczema, and that was my first real introduction to some of this. Before then, I had been interested in herbalism a little bit because I would always look for the perfect eczema lotion, and I was like, oh, there's some herbs here, and then I went down the rabbit hole of, oh, there's herbs for eczema, let's try it, but nothing was really helping. And then that nurse mentioned that, and it was life-changing, and I was like, why has no doctor mentioned diet before? Like, why? Like, just mind was blown. Within 2 weeks of giving up dairy, my severe eczema that I had had for probably 18 years, my whole life, my severe eczema that had been so embarrassing, had ruined so many experiences for me. I had bullying and everything just from dealing with it. Within 2 or 3 weeks, it was gone. And I was like, this is unreal. There's no way this is from food. Food is medicine. So that really started a journey. And then Unfortunately, though, that same year I came down with mono. So I had a couple months of feeling good, and then I got mono, and I was really sick with mono. I missed a lot of school. I was really sick. It was my junior year, I believe, was when I got the mono, and then I was sick through senior year as well. But didn't notice the after effects of that until I went to college. And then my freshman year of college, I was really, really exhausted. I could not get out of bed, and it was labeled as depression. It was like, you're adjusting, it's so hard to adjust, and all these things. And something in me was like, well, I don't feel depressed. I don't feel sad. I just feel so tired. I feel like my body's made of lead and I can't move. And at that point, I first discovered the idea of chronic fatigue syndrome, but I didn't have insurance. I had no one really to run any tests or to confirm or deny that's what it was. So I started to think, well, maybe I am depressed. Everyone around me's right. It's in my head. So that was a journey in college I went through. And again, some weird mystery symptoms of just the fatigue and feeling like I had the constant flu, like what's going on. But I also discovered exercise in college, and I was doing a lot of like herbal medicine stuff. And so I think I was keeping some symptoms at bay just by trying to put myself in generally really good health. But then I'd have these flare ups where then I'd be exhausted again and feel sick again. So that went on for a while. And then, after college, a couple years into the real world and adulthood, I think it was my first or second year of grad school. I, had insurance. I went to a doctor who was like, oh my gosh, your B12 levels are like non-existent. That's why you're so tired. That's why you're so sick. Let's start the B12 injections and get that going. And I felt a little different, but not really. But she was convinced that was it. And then things got worse every year. My Raynaud's that I've had my whole life got very bad. I couldn't go outside at all when it was cold. I was tired all the time. I developed like a tremor, like a shakiness that would not go away no matter what I did. Just dizziness. This is progressively over the years. I developed, they thought it was POTS, where I couldn't stand up without kind of falling back down, or my heart would race and I'd get super dizzy. Just autonomic dysfunction, really hot and then really cold, couldn't regulate body temperature, couldn't regulate dizziness or fatigue. And that alongside with the chronic fatigue type stuff started to also develop like, swollen lymph nodes from time to time, and a lot of different food aversions, like multiple chemical sensitivities, and like histamine intolerance. A lot of foods were making me have allergic reactions. I would have an allergic reaction just to getting cold at this point. I would get hives and, asthma symptoms, and random other allergies were popping up in my life, and the fatigue was never ending. So my doctors were convinced that it was lupus and multiple sclerosis. That was it. That was like, every day, we got to test you again for this. And now we're going to do the MRI. Now we're going to do the brain scan. And now we're going to do 50 million times more blood work. And during this time as well, like I had my daughter, I had some, emergent trauma with birth, and, had a hemorrhage. I had 2 hemorrhages, and they were like, well, maybe it's a bleeding disorder. That all came back normal. But throughout that 10 years, also my white blood cell count was always almost non-existent. And they're like, well, it has to be autoimmune. It has to be immunocompromised. Like, what is this? And nothing was working for those things. So symptoms going downhill, all of these diagnoses, all of these tests and poking and prodding, and nothing was coming back. It was inconclusive. And they're like, well, it still could be this or this, because the tests aren't always conclusive. But I'd mention, like, is it chronic fatigue? And then test my Epstein-Barr. And they were like, no, I mean, it shows you had a infection in the past, but it doesn't show anything current. You're fine. And I was like, well, is it Lyme? So many people have Lyme and have all these symptoms. And they're like, no, we did the Lyme test. It was negative. And that was it. We did that one Lyme test, negative, negative, negative. And they even redid that a few times because they thought it could be, and nothing. So that was the journey for when I started the medical rabbit hole. That was 2011, and it's now 2022. And I just kind of got sick of things. I also had multiple random broken bones during this time. And I don't know, like with bone weakening, they're like, yeah, we don't know. We don't think it's osteoporosis. We're not sure what to tell you. And then this past year, I started getting like skin infections that just would not heal. Like I got a cut on my foot and it wouldn't heal for months. They thought it was the Raynaud's. Anyway, just more and more things. So I had been following some functional medicine doctors online for a while. I reached out to one that I really like and appreciate. I can ask permission from her at some point to share her name if she's open to it. But We had a similar journey from following her online, and she was able, just recently, this past 2 months, was able to order a whole range of really extensive testing from Vibrant America, Vibrant Wellness Testing in California. And they do all of the full panel of testing that a lot of insurance companies don't cover, so doctors never bother to order. And the results just came back yesterday, and it was scary, but so extremely validating. So I came back positive for Lyme, surprisingly, after all the negative Western medicine tests, because they test like two little things. And if you look at the Vibrant America testing, it's pages and pages of types of infections they test for. So I came back positive for certain types of the Lyme infection, and I think it was like 4 other tick-borne infections that all came back positive. And one of which actually attacks and feeds off of white blood cells, which explains the white blood cell issues. And some of the Lyme and co-infections actually affect bone health, which could affect, explain these mystery bone issues. And my Epstein-Barr results were over 30, which I guess is like the highest it goes. They don't measure over 30, whatever the lab value is. So that was also really validating with the chronic fatigue syndrome. And then all of these tests just explain so many things. It's probably not fibromyalgia, it's joint pain from Lyme disease or tick infections. So it was really validating to get all that information, and I just wanted to share a little bit about that journey so far. If anyone has been frustrated looking for answers like that, they exist. And so it's really an interesting, and it's a tough journey, and it's not good to be, you don't want to become obsessed with it, but you have no choice. And then sometimes you really need to jump outside the box. Like going the naturopathic route has been my preferred method for so long, but then I was like, I don't know how to afford all of this. Like the testing's so expensive. I would use my doctor for testing and then go to naturopaths or acupuncturists or herbalists. But to realize that the naturopathic community can order lab results cash pay that insurance would never think to cover, so doctors never think to order, it was mind-blowing. So I wanted to jump on and just mention my healing story to share for those who would be interested and who, have similar stories to maybe get some answers, but also to mention like this really important tool of using functional medicine providers and natural medicine providers that can do extensive lab work, because you might have answers just waiting there that you never knew you could access because Western medicine doesn't talk about them. So that's my story as of now, and we're doing some natural herbal protocols to try to address some detox symptoms and try to address infections and things along those lines. But I'll update on those as well. I just wanted to update for now that journey to diagnosis, because that is so much of a trial for so many people, and I want to let you know that there is hope there and you can get answers, but sometimes it takes almost 15 years to get them, but they're there. And so I wanted to just give you guys hope about finding answers, and that's half of the battle, right, is knowing what you're dealing with. So I hope you guys have a blessed day full of healing, and I'll pop back on hopefully soon with some updates.